You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Virginia Madison County School Board approved banning 21 books from its high school library. Some of the books included The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie, The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky, Shatter Me, a series of 6 books by Taheri Mafi, which are Defy Me, Ignite Me, Restore Me, Shatter Me, Imagine Me, and Unravel Me, Tar Baby by Toni Morrison, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, Sula by Toni Morrison, Love by Toni Morrison, The Tale of the Body Thief by Anne Rice, Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice, Snow Falling on Cedars by David Gutterson, Empire of Stone by Sarah Moss, Bag of Bones by Stephen King, 11/22/63, a novel by Stephen King, It by Stephen King, and Fury Born by Claire Legrand. Whenever I see a list of banned books, pretty much just looks like a list of required reading to me. Stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. We got a lot to cover today. We had some great guests this week. We had Philip Kennedy Johnson on Tuesday and Fabrice Sapolsky on Wednesday. So while they were absolutely amazing to have, everything else I got to condense into one day. So we will be covering a lot of stuff today. Let me start off by saying hello to Ed, to Cool, to Triple B, and of course, JD on the board. Let's see. Ed says, what? In 2023, we're banning books. That should anger everyone that is not Nazi Germany. I agree. I think banning books is absolutely ridiculous. And I don't even know why would you ban Stephen King novels or Toni Morrison just none of those books screamed out ban, None of them. They don't even make sense. You want to ban Satanic Verses by Solomon Rushdie? At least I could see the argument, but no, it's just a bunch of crap. So let's see. JD says, I think banning books is a good way to get teens interested in them. Now, if it's reverse psychology, that might be interesting. So, but yeah. And it's Virginia, which blows my mind because they've got a Democratic governor, and you would think, but it's just getting ridiculous out there. But let's put politics aside. I don't usually like to do politics, but that one angers me. Something else that angers me, and I want to broach really quick and then move on, is Jeremy Renner. On January 1st, Jeremy Renner had a horrible accident. He ended up in the emergency room after being airlifted. We know the story. He got crushed by his, no, they don't give any reasons on the books. That's, again, why I don't understand it. But so Jeremy Renner gets in the accident with his snowcat or a pit bully or whatever they call it. And he's in the hospital. He's recovering. And God bless him. And I pray for him, the whole thing. He's home now. He's recovering. And he's still promoting mayor of Kingstown, which I mean, that's a trooper. That really is. But there's a lot of news stories out there, and I didn't even know they were out there until Lisa got a hold of me and said, "Oh, did you hear that Jeremy Renner might lose his leg?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't hear that from any of my normal reliable sources and websites and stuff like that I consider reliable. Where did you get this from?" And it's some little podunk nowhere website, and it's talking about a friend has said that, and this was before he even went home. A friend has said that, basically the quote was, "Well, I hope he can, I sure hope he keeps his leg." And they extruded that out into being he might lose his leg. Now, none of the legitimate sources, we're hearing the 911 call. And other things in the article were false. He was on the highway, not at his home. 911 call has him from his driveway. Just one story after another that's getting out there that these websites are posting to get people to click on them, and there's no fact or basis to them, and it's just getting worse and worse. And then I see people coming along and they retweet these stories, or they post them, and some of them are even posting about, "Oh, this story is BS." Don't give them the oxygen. Don't repost them and say how bad they are. Don't give out those websites. But when you look at a story like that, look at the source. And if it's a source you've never heard of, then don't bother. It's not reliable. It's like these rumors that are out there. This person's going to be the Reed Richards. That person's going to be Reed Richards. I saw somebody talk about how the actor from Good Space is now in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and they've announced him as a character named Quaz, who has some telepathic ability. And this guy's like, "Well, we know that's fake because we know he's playing Reed Richards." We know what? How do we know this? What source? Again, it's getting ridiculous. So you can't stop these guys from doing it because they're doing it for clickbait. The word Ed says right there. But we don't have to give them the oxygen in the room. We don't have to give them the space and time. So I will not talk about now. There are some sources of intriguing rumors, and we will bring those up and we will talk about them because sometimes the sources are really good. They've proven themselves. But most of these websites, clickbait.com, might as well be what they're called. They're just crap, and they're not worth the time. So I'd say if you're clicking on stories and you see one that seems far-fetched or a huge announcement, check Deadline, Variety, check anything to do with DC, check James Gunn's Twitter feed. That's where you're going to get actual news from, not these little nowhere news sites that no one's ever heard of. So, all right, guys. Now, speaking of rumors, how's that for a horrible segue? We did get an image today that I think is worth talking about. And if JD would put that up for me, please. That is actor Royce Johnson, and you may know him as police detective sergeant Brett Mahoney from the Netflix Daredevil series. Well, that is a new post from Mr. Johnson, which says somewhere in New York. Now, he is wearing an NYPD officer uniform. You'll notice that these 3 stripes on his shoulder or on his arm is significant of being a sergeant. And last time we saw him, he was Detective Sergeant Mahoney. And we know that Daredevil, the new Daredevil Born Again, is about to start filming in New York. And we know that the second unit has actually begun doing some shots. So this is a pretty strong indication that wait, Triple B says Scream 6, baby. Are you referring to the picture? Because that tells me that he's coming back to Daredevil Born Again, which I find fascinating because we've been debating, is it going to be a reboot? Is it going to be a soft reboot? Is the Netflix stuff in continuity? The fact that we have Wilson Fisk and Matt Murdock from the Netflix series coming over, Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, that could still be, oh, we just like those actors, we're bringing them over. But if you're bringing all the way down here to Brett Mahoney, then okay. I have not seen the trailer for Scream 6 yet. I'll have to watch that. But if you're bringing Brett Mahoney back, then that seems pretty far down. I mean, are you getting Rob Moran to come back as Turk? Are you getting Deborah Ann Wool and Eldon Hansen to come back as Foggy? I'd love that because I thought that Netflix had a great cast. I actually thought most of the casting in Netflix was good. I even think that Finn Jones is salvageable as Iron Fist as long as you don't have a certain writer who will never mention working on the show. But we'll have to see if Royce Johnson's return means that it's more in continuity, if it's more connected than we've been, speculating. So, but that's good to see. I'd love to see him back. I want to see if Foggy's going to buy more cigars for his mom, for Brett's mom. I love that. I love that opening. That was actually pretty cool. Ed says, for your information, just in case you didn't see it, Vox Machina Season 2 hits tomorrow, finally. Yep. We are ready for that. It's going to drop tomorrow. And Kyle and I will be covering that because that's how we did the first show. We'll probably cover it. We'll cover it, of course, in waves because it's being released 3 episodes at a time over 4 weeks. But we will be covering Vox Machina Season 2. All right, let's go ahead and move on. We've got 3 shows I want to cover today. And they're 3 very different shows. One is the 2nd season of an animated series from Star Wars, The Bad Batch. One is the Last of Us series on HBO Max, based on the video game with Pedro Pascal. And the third is the new Night Court, the reboot or continuation of Night Court. And I think I'm going to start with Night Court. I've got Peacock Plus or Peacock, whatever. I don't know if there's a plus on it or not. And I originally got it because it came with my cable service for a year, and they had the Lost Symbol, which is the Da Vinci Code guy, the Dan Brown series with Robert Langdon, and I liked it. I actually thought it was really good. They also have Quantum Leap, and I have a hard time catching things when they're on the air, so I like being able to get them on demand. So I watch Quantum Leap that way, which I need to get back to their new episodes of that now. But they had the first 2 episodes of Night Court I was able to watch them last night. Ish. I'll say ish. I watched them ish. I watched the first one, and I was very mixed on it. The opening credits look horrible. It's like bad 80s graphics. You've got this background that looks like the original background from the 80s series with the character, the new characters superimposed over them in a bad edit job. And a slight tweak on the theme song, which I always liked the theme song, but it doesn't quite have that same pop that the original version of it did. But, I'm not going to knock a show because it's got a bad opening credits too much. There are a ton of characters in this. Melissa Ranch, I think that's how you pronounce her name, is basically playing the daughter of Harry Stone. And it's an interesting idea. And Melissa Ranch was very funny on Big Bang Theory. So, and then she's kind of the one that pushed this thing together. And her Abby Stone character is interesting and good in some scenes and not as good in others. If she has to carry the scene, if she's the source of the comedy, it's not that good. If she is the straight man for somebody else in the scene, it's a little better. The actress Lucretia, I think that's how you pronounce her name, plays the new bailiff, Donna Gruggs, and she's kind of a mix between Marsha Warfield and Richard Mole. She's got some of Bull's lines, but looks and acts a bit more like Marsha Warfield's character. And there's only one bailiff, where they always had two in the previous series, so I'm kind of curious about that. But she's pretty good. She's got some interesting, funny lines. And Kapal Talwalkar, who plays Neil, the new, I don't know what he's, a judge's assistant. It's the character Mac played in the original series. And he was pretty funny. He had some good bits. I think he's going to be a decent character. The character of Olivia, the new prosecutor, played by India de Beaufort, is just a waste of screen time. There was nothing funny about the character. She was annoying when she was on the screen, and I don't even know why. There was nothing there. But John Larroquette is back as Dan Fielding. And while I'm not that thrilled with what they're doing to him, John Larroquette is still amazing. The only really funny stuff in the show is when he's doing it, when he's on the screen. And it's very funny. I found myself laughing out loud. But if he wasn't on screen, it was just dead. There was nothing. And you got to remember, John Larroquette won 4 Emmy Awards in a row for playing this character. And then the next year, he refused to be submitted for nomination. He would not let them nominate him anymore after the 4th one, because he didn't think he deserved to be nominated again. He didn't want to do that. He felt that it was the writing or whatever it was. He took himself out of consideration. And I think he would have just kept winning the Emmys because he was brilliant as Dan Fielding. And he still is. The scenes he's in, the lines he says, and they're literally calling back at one point 2 lines from the original series. And I thought that was great. And I get the dynamic between him and Melissa Ranch as Abby. It has that Harry Dan feeling as well. So from that point of view, that was decent. And the humor about the cases is there. When they let the humor be about the cases, that worked. But anything involving the new DA was just horrible. And anytime they let Melissa Runch try to be the comedy, it didn't work. So the stuff that made me laugh was John Larroquette being Dan Fielding. And I just thought that it really was really good. Yeah, from that point. But Ed says, I never had the opportunity to ask a writer's thoughts on this, so forgive me, but I have to ask. Why do you think the vast majority of stuff these days are remakes or redos of movies and TV shows? Is it laziness? Is it lack of writers? Are they out of ideas? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this when you have time. You know what? I'll actually answer this right now. It's not laziness, and it's not lack of new ideas or anything like that. Yeah, JD just hit it on the head. Studios are scared. They make these investments and they don't pay off. So when they can do something that might have a built-in audience, they're going to do that. And and that's the thing is, if you could reboot Night Court, or you could take a risk on a completely new show, you know that you're going to have people tuning in because it's Night Court. That's a better option for them. It's a little safer gamble. And nowadays, I mean, you look at, there's so many networks and so many streaming services that you have to get people's attention quickly out the gate. The days of building momentum just are gone. A show like X-Files that started off slowly and then started building a fan base over time wouldn't work in today's market. Just look at how many shows on Netflix get canceled after 1 or 2 seasons because they don't get, Netflix has a horrible release schedule or model, but they just don't get the attention they need. That very few shows start off slowly and can build up because they don't get the chance. So when you get something like Night Court or MacGyver or the $6 Million Man or Bionic Woman, whatever shows they're rebooting. I think CNN had a report this morning that like 35 shows right now are reboots or, continuations of previous series. 35 different things out there. And the other stuff, they're based off of comic books or movies, or because they want that built-in audience. They want people to tune in because, again, they don't feel they could actually spend the time to build an audience. The problem is that a lot of these just aren't as good. Like Night Court. I got through the first episode. I laughed quite a bit at scenes with Dan in it, even though they're trying to turn him into a defense attorney now, which is interesting. They also start him off as a barista, which I think is kind of funny. But again, when he's not on the screen, the show just grinds to a halt. And then he comes back in, and if he is the source of the humor, it works great. If he's just another cog, it still doesn't work that well. It's not that funny. Or if someone else is trying to be the funny person. So, but he's got all the best lines. It's his delivery that works. And I got probably 10 minutes into the second episode and just couldn't finish it. I had to step away, and I'll probably go back and finish it, but it wasn't catching me. I'm too tired to care about this at this point. So if for the nostalgia and for John Larroquette, the show's worth tuning in for. The rest of it, I feel bad for, there's interesting actors and stuff, but it already needs help. And it felt like we were jumping a lot. you know, like she just starts as the judge, and then boom, 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 and it's like everybody knows each other already, and it's not like this is her first day on the job, and that's what the first episode is. It seems to speed through all of that, and that's really weird as well. I mean, one of the things I loved about Night Court was that Harry was appointed at the last minute by an outgoing mayor or governor, and so there was a question whether or not he should have been a judge. So I thought that was interesting, and there really isn't that here. You know, it just doesn't click, and they lean heavily on the older show, and that's what works, and what doesn't work is the new stuff. So JD says, plus there's a huge difference between generations doing a reboot of an old property, gets the olds, and you add younger actors to get a wilder. Okay, I see what you mean. Ed says, did you watch House MD when it was on? John Larroquette was in an episode where House woke him up from a vegetative state. It was so good, and John Larroquette knocked it out of the park. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I loved House and watched every episode. It was one of my go-to shows at the time, but it got me basically it was Sherlock Holmes in a hospital, you know, and I always love talking about that because it's what it was. It was House was Sherlock Holmes, House Holmes. His best friend was Wilson instead of Watson. And if you go back to the pilot episode, his first patient is Irene Adler. They weren't even hiding it. It was Sherlock Holmes in a hospital. And yeah, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So when it got more and more dramatic and less about the cases is when I started to wean off a little bit. But overall, it was great. House is my favorite show of all time, and Hugh Laurie was amazing. He was. Yeah, I loved him talking about his accent and how, you know, he had to drop his English accent. And he has a very proper, posh English accent normally. So for him to drop to do an American accent, he said he felt like he was saying everything wrong through all the filming, which I thought was interesting. All right, we got to do a quick break, and we will come back and talk about The Bad Batch and The Last of Us. We'll be right back.
Why was Princess Zelda sad after watching a bunch of YouTube videos? She couldn't find the link in the description. We'll stop if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's super easy. Click subscribe and click the bell when you do. And thanks for supporting the EXP.
Comic Collectibles is a pretty straightforward show. You got Rex here, he sells the comics, and you got Rockin' Robbie, he knows about the comics. And finally, John, well, no one really knows what John does. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a great guy, but he just keeps showing up. Come to think of it, I don't even really know how he gets in here. Anyway, awesome comics, rare books, rarer signatures, slabbed books, and amazing cover sketches by Ken Hazer and others. Simple formula, you want the comics, you buy the comics. To sum up, Rex sells the comics, Robbie knows the comics, and John, who might possibly be a ghost. I mean, seriously, has anyone ever seen him show up or leave? Comic Collectibles with Rex and John, Mondays from 6 to 8 Eastern on The Experience. Comic Culture and Sales.
You know how when you go to Comic-Con, after Comic-Con, you go to the hotel bar, and there's a whole bunch of people playing music and dancing, and you've got Pikachu and Lara Croft Tomb Raider doing the cha-cha slide just down from Deadpool and Batman and Wonder Woman? That's every Saturday night over on the Experience Twitch channel. Join Taji Beats for the EXP Dance Party, exclusively on Twitch, twitch.tv/the_EXP.
Everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Just to finish up about John Larroquette, he was brilliant in House. He was also brilliant on The Practice, where he played a serial killer. Totally different type of character, but he's a guy that I will watch do just about anything. And just and to throw out a trivia question for you guys, see who remembers. His character's name was Dan Fielding, except his first name wasn't actually Dan. We find out in an episode where there's a bunch of babies born, and the person who he helps deliver the baby wants to name the child after him, and we find out what his real first name is. That episode also had Brent Spiner from Star Trek in it. But do you guys remember what Dan Fielding's real name is? Real first name. So, all right. Okay. John Larroquette's great in everything. We'll come back to that. JD, remind me in case I forget. We do have an announcement to make. Let's see. JD said once in an interview that Stephen Fry would do guest spots on Bones on the next stage over. They'd have lunch together and Stephen would rib him about his accent constantly. Yeah. Of course, Fry and Laurie was an amazing comedy duo. Yeah. You're close. It's a Reinhold, Ed, named after one of the show's either creators or producers, Reinhold Weege, who, so they picked his name to make it kind of fun of it. But yeah, so he was actually Reinhold Fielding. So, all right. We have an announcement to make. We've been teasing on The Experience for quite a bit now that we had a big thing coming up and you want to be a subscriber to our YouTube channel, which if you're not, do it now. And the announcement is we're building towards 1,500 subscribers. Last time I checked, we were at 1,340 something. I'm not sure exactly, but we're getting up there. But once we hit 1,500, we are going to give away 15 graded comics, each one worth at least $100. So that's like $1,500 worth of graded comics we'll be giving away. And we're basically going to give them away across all of our shows. So I'll have one to give away. We'll have one to give away on in-stores this week. So basically you tune into your favorite shows and you have a chance to win if you're a subscriber. But before that happens, we have to get to 1,500. So help spread the word. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, and you can hit the like and the thumbs up and stuff like that while you're at it too. That would be nice. But you'll definitely want to do that. And then once we hit 1,500, and we'll let you all know when that happens, we're going to start giving away CGC graded comics. So, all right, let's move on to The Bad Batch. Episode 4 of The Bad Batch dropped earlier this week. And this is probably the most television series from Star Trek, or from Star Wars. Sorry, Ed, it's a question. When Nick was begging people to like and follow The Experience, I did so with 3 or 4 accounts. Do I need to undo all but one so I don't get disqualified from the prizes? I don't know. I'm thinking no, but JD, could you copy that question down and throw it to the powers that be? And Ed just broke the system. Yes. So we'll get back to you on that, Ed. All right. So yeah, it is the most standard television feeling of any Star Wars series, because it has these episodes that don't feel like, you watch Andor and every episode is important and it's all building towards the overarching story. With Bad Batch, you have these kind of, I don't want to say filler episodes, but character-driven episodes where the only purpose for them is to build the characters. And this was one of those episodes. It was called Faster. And thankfully, it wasn't about pod racing, but it was about racing. And it's these little scooter shuttle things that are armed to the teeth. And, it's almost like Death Race 2000. And Sid takes Tech, Wrecker, and Omega with her as muscle to this planet that she's got this racer on. And the racer is a robot named Teo, who is one of the most annoying characters that they've made in a long time. And she runs into a old friend named Malegi, who is voiced by Ernie Hudson, which is great. So you got Ben Schwartz doing Teo, Ernie Hudson doing Malegi, and Rhea Perlman doing the voice of Sid. So it's kind of a fun little triumvirate there. But the show itself, it felt like, oh God, here we go again. Here we're going to have an episode where we're going to build up and something's going to happen to the robot and Omega is going to have to race and we're going to find out she's spectacular, because that's kind of what Dave Filoni does. It's kind of Dave's thing. And it all plays out exactly like that. Teo gets his, Sid and Malegi have a bet, and Malegi's racer damages Sid's racer, Teo, before the victory, so she owes him a bunch of credits or whatever it is, and she doesn't have it. So he's come to collect with his thugs, and Omega gets involved and basically offers him double or nothing on another race. Now, Teo's in shatters at this point. The speeder is broken up, and you're thinking, Omega's going to have to race it. At some point, Omega's going to have to race, and we're getting like a pod racer thing. We're going to totally find out, I just saw it coming, and I was just, no, don't do this. Come on. And as the episode went on, Teo is having arguments with Tech because Tech is trying to figure out the course. He's trying to use his mind like he always does. He's trying to do the math and stuff, and Teo's like, nope, can't do it now. And then we get to the point where they're out there doing a practice run, and Teo gets run over by another ship or scooter thing and destroyed again. And this time they can't rebuild them. So Malegi's like, well, I guess she has to forfeit. And Tech's like, no, I'll race. And it's like, wait a minute. That's not what I thought was coming. I thought it was going to be Omega, because that was what was being set up. The Omega was going to be the heroine of the day. And no, they went with Tech, and we really got to see more of Tech. They really built his character up a bit. And that's how, that was the thing of the episode, was giving Tech more to do, because the whole first season, he just seemed like the smart guy. He was the smart guy. That was it. That was his thing. And it didn't really, he and Echo didn't really differentiate themselves from each other. They kind of blended. And that's what they've been doing this season, is they've been kind of splitting the team up here and there and spending time with each of them. This one, it happened to be those three. The other two guys were off doing a simple run. So we got to focus on these three characters and Sid. We also do get a warning that Sid is probably going to betray everybody, which is going to come to pass, because it's like Chekhov's gun, Sid's betrayal. So, by the way, JD says you're good, Ed. That Kyle is fine. Or Kyle says you're fine, sir. So yeah, the episode was better than I expected. I did think we were going pod racer, and we didn't. And I did think we were going to have Omega being the racer, and we didn't. But it was a fun little episode. It was a nice little side episode. And again, we're building on the character of Tech, which we haven't done much of. So I like that. And yeah, I thought it was a pretty good episode. Now, again, we haven't seen much what the overarching story's going to be. We've had hints of it. We know the character of Rampart is out there. We know that he knows the Bad Batch exists, even though he told the Emperor that they were gone. So they're probably going to be very focused on, or he's going to be very focused on getting rid of them before the Emperor finds out. So I see that's where we're going to go, but we're not there yet. And we're 4 episodes into the series, into the second season. Now, let me see, how many episodes is the second season going to be? I think it's going to be another 16. Yeah. And we've got the titles for all 16, which is kind of amazing. Normally they just release the titles slowly, but we've already had Spoils of War, Ruins of War, the Solitary Clone, and Faster. Solitary Clone and Faster both were great. Then we have Embedded, Tribe, The Clone Conspiracy, Truth and Consequences, The Crossing, Retrieval, Metamorphosis. That should be interesting, because I doubt it's about a giant cockroach. The Outpost, Pabu, Tipping Point, The Summit, and the final one's called Plan 99, which is interesting because they're Clone Force 99, so that might have something to do with it. But so the season's off to a good start, actually a better start than season 1. There was some things about season 1 that bothered me, Omega being one of them, and how much everything's centered around her. So I've enjoyed the fact that she's been kind of toned down a bit for season 2. We're spending more time with the other characters, even though she was a big part of the opening episode. She wasn't the only big part, and now we're getting more time with the other characters. We spent more time on Crosshairs. Now we spent more time on Tech, and a little bit more on Wrecker. So I think they've got a good season started. I'm liking it better than I did the first season. So, all right, let's go ahead and squeeze in our second break. And then when we come back, we'll talk about The Last of Us. Be right back.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.
Did you know that across America there are over 2, maybe even 3 live stream producers who can't even afford Mountain Dew? Take Brian here. Brian has gone 2 weeks without a sip of Red Bull. If it goes on much longer, he may take a shower and get a real job. Situations like this are as tragic as they are preventable. Join the experience on YouTube and gain access to special emojis and members-only streams. For less than a cup of coffee, you can keep socially awkward hermit people working from their parents' basements where they belong. Scan the QR code on the screen to join. You'll be glad you did.
welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Remember to stick around. We got a lot of great stuff coming up today. We have What's in the Box showing right after this. Then we have Space Cadets, and we have a new show starting up tonight called Sketch Up, which is Mel and Mog Park interviewing someone, in this case, Troy Mann, I think it is. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but interviewing him while Mog is drawing. So we're going to have a live art happening with an interview. And Troy is talking about his upcoming book, the 442nd Airborne, the Lost Battalion. So stick around for that. That's 7 o'clock Pacific time, 10 o'clock Eastern, I believe. So stick around for that. Checking the news sites real quick while on break. It seems Glass Onion has become the third most viewed film in a week, according to the Nielsen's U.S. streaming charts. I loved Glass Onion. Thought it was great. And Jack Ryan has passed Wednesday on the streaming charts as well. So Jack Ryan was a great third season, and I look forward to see what they do going forward, because I know there's a fourth season in the works. On a sad note, it was announced that David Crosby, the legendary singer with the Byrds, and of course Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, has passed away at the age of 81. So just a little bit of sad news there in the news. Tony Moy, thank you, Tony Moy. I knew it was an M, couldn't remember exactly. Jay says, speaks to my soul, except it's monster and my bedroom. Oh, the commercial. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about The Last of Us. For any of you who watch in stores this week, you'll probably notice that I may not be the biggest fan about post-apocalyptic stories. And it's not that I don't like post-apocalyptic stories. I've written one. You know, The Freeze is basically a post-apocalyptic story without the apocalypse. Jay says, going to listen to Summer Breeze and cry now. Yeah. So this was probably not the show for me, the Last of Us. And I will say that I've heard from a lot of people that you'll like the show better if you have a good understanding of the video game. And while I can appreciate that, I shouldn't need to have played a video game to like a TV show. I had never played The Witcher when I started watching The Witcher, and I loved The Witcher. Hadn't read the books either. The Witcher stood on its own, and then I went back and explored both the video game and the novels. And they exist onto themselves and stuff like that. So if you're telling me that to like something, I'm going to need to have played a video game with zombie-like creatures, then I'm probably not your guy for it. That said, this has been an anticipated series by a lot of people. It's a very popular video game. And it stars Pedro Pascal and Anna Torv. Pedro Pascal, of course, being the Mandalorian and a ton of other things. Anna Torv coming off of Fringe. So, you didn't know The Witcher was a video game yet? Yeah, it started off as a series of novels and then got adapted into a video game series, a very popular video game series. And I think there's 3 different games out there of it. And then got turned into a TV show. So I wanted to really like The Last of Us. And it opens with it opens slowly. And a lot of build up and to me, that really drug. And I realized they were trying to set up the normalcy level before everything else going on. But I found it very boring. And then when we get to the part where things start happening, they do a lot of it off screen to set up the tension. And then we suddenly have it thrown in our face what's going on. But it's not through realization of what's happened. It's through somebody's reaction to Pedro Pascal's character reacting to. And we play that out until this tragic moment. And then suddenly we jump 20 years in the future, I think it is. And it's like 20 years after what had happened. We don't get explained what happened. We really don't get a good idea of what's going on. We get a little bit of it in the early scenes, but again, not that much. And I mean, is it a zombie show? Is it, again, having not played the video game, I don't know exactly what happens. And I'm having a hard time carrying. Yeah, reaction shots are definitely cheaper than CGI. So as I'm watching this, I'm starting to want to fast forward through some of it, which is never a good sign. And then when we jump ahead, it feels like a completely different show. But it doesn't feel like it's 20 years ahead. Pedro Pascal doesn't look that different. They didn't like de-age him a lot in, the early stuff. So what he looks like now, they just kind of grayed up his hair a bit. So he didn't look 20 years older. And we spend so much time with everything else setting up this new world and stuff that, again, I just got bored with it, and I should have. There's a huge tragic moment, and I should really feel for the character, but it doesn't really hit for me. And again, I see a lot of people online reacting to this and loving it. But and they talk about how close it is to the video game and stuff like that. And it's like, does it only work because you've seen the video game, or is it stand well on its own? And I haven't really seen a lot of people talk about it that haven't played the game. So I don't know. Some of the stuff happened at the very end that made me think, okay, I might give a second episode a shot, but it would be on a short leash. But I'm not like anticipating the next episode. I'm not like, ooh, let's get to it, It just, like I said, it started slow. There's a lot of world building, and I almost feel like they could have cut the entire beginning part of it, put us right into the world as it is now, and play it out that way, and then had an episode that reveals the 20 years ago later on, like a couple episodes in, because I think it's supposed to make us care about Pedro Pascal's character, and it doesn't for me. It makes me care about his daughter, but she's not the person we're following. So Jay says, that's what I'm afraid of with Gears of War finally getting a movie. that if people didn't play the game, read the comics or books, they might not get it. That is possible. But if you're introducing a franchise and you're a writer, your job is to make that happen. You know, and your main character doesn't, you don't care about your main character when the bad things happen. You care about the other person. And then we are supposed to follow the main character. So I think it was it was a poor decision to start it the way they did. Little Bear from Game of Thrones, Bella Ramsey. Oh, okay. You may be under a misconception. It's not about Pedro Pascal. The story is about the girl. Yeah. And again, if I'm under the misconception, that means it's bad writing. Because I watched the show. I watched all 90 minutes of it or whatever it was. And she was just annoying. The little girl was just annoying, which is a horrible thing they do nowadays. They don't make these characters that the children characters that interesting. And how they try to make them interesting is they make him, you know, tough and fighting back and sarcastic and all that. And it's like, it's kind of a one-trick pony at this point, you know? Is there another way to make a child interesting that doesn't? The daughter in the opening is much more interesting to me than the little girl, than Elle. You know? Somebody pointed out online that Pedro Pascal's character is very similar to David Harbour's character in Stranger Things. You know, loses a daughter, end up with another daughter basically named Elle. The first daughter's name is Sarah. It's the same names even. Yeah, like I said, it just didn't click for me. So that's my thoughts on that. I may give the second episode a chance, but and it, you know, it might be my distaste for the overabundance of post-apocalyptic stories right now. But I wanted to give it a shot. I went in knowing it was a post-apocalyptic story, but I like Pedro Pascal. I wanted to like it, and I came out of it going, not that excited. So, does being a writer yourself sometimes hinder enjoyment for some things, or just make it easier to catch flaws? Yeah, I have a hard time with mystery movies because I know all the tricks for setting up a mystery. So, you know, and I usually know who the killer is way before they want you to, because I see the things to set it up. Rian Johnson's one of the few people that I don't guess movies because he doesn't do things normal. But yeah, and it could be, but again, I'm walking into the franchise with no background to it, and you guys have to tell me the stories about the girl, then that's bad. So, all right, guys, I have to get out of here. I'm running long, so let me wrap this up. See you guys next week. Stick around for What's in the Box with Jenna, and have a great weekend. And remember, hit that subscribe button. Good night, everybody.
Did you know that every Experience show, including some exclusive content, streams on Twitch? Check it out, twitch.tv/the_EX.